Welcome in, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you join me today for this formal expository study of Numbers chapter 1. Consider this a bit of a masterclass lecture on the profound depths of God's Word. Today, we're diving straight in to Numbers 1, Census, Camp, Calling. And as we spend this time together, we're going to be relying on a literal, grammatical, and historical framework. Basically, that just means we're going to look very carefully at what the text plainly says, how it's intricately structured, and the literal historical reality in which all of this actually took place. Because, we aren't just reading some sterile ledger of ancient math here. No way. We are examining this beautiful, sweeping portrait of a redeemed people arranged around a holy God. All right, let's dive right in. Here is our quick roadmap for today's lesson. We've got a great systematic journey ahead of us. We'll start off with the historical and cultural background, move straight into the biblical narrative itself, unpack the theological significance, draw out some vital spiritual lessons for our lives today, and then wrap it all up with our conclusion. Let us examine the historical and cultural background. Now, to properly understand literally any biblical text, we first have to place it in its correct dispensational context, right? When we examine biblical history, we see it unfolds across 7 classic dispensations. You can think of these as different administrative eras of God's sovereign plan for humanity. While Numbers chapter 1 falls squarely within the dispensation of law, this specific era was initiated at Mount Sinai. Israel has been miraculously delivered from Egypt, they've received the covenant, built the tabernacle, and they've just learned all those sacrificial rhythms detailed back in Leviticus. So they're now operating under a very specific, conditional covenant with God as a newly formed earthly nation. Recognizing this conditional aspect is absolutely crucial for understanding the strict, unwavering rules of their camp. What is really fascinating about this specific command is how it anchors our text historically and geographically. The setting here is the second year after the deliverance from Egypt, right out there in the dusty desert of Sinai. Now, the ancient Near East was absolutely full of pagan kings who took censuses, but those secular counts, they were entirely for taxation, forced labor, or self-serving conscription. Israel's census is completely distinct. Why? Because as Numbers 1:1 in the NIV explicitly tells us, it is commanded by the Lord himself. It isn't a tax grab. It's tethered directly to holiness, to worship, and to the awe-inspiring reality of the divine presence dwelling right there in the middle of their encampment. And that brings us to the whole tribal framework, which, let me tell you, is far, far more than just bureaucratic bookkeeping. This framework preserves incredibly crucial inheritance lines. It registers ancestry by clans and families. Imagine being out there in the harsh, unforgiving conditions of the frontier wilderness. These tribal standards functioned as vital rallying points for basic survival. They were living memory devices, anchoring individual families to their specific, God-ordained place within the much larger people of God. It essentially told sons and grandsons exactly where they belonged. Furthermore, this whole structure perfectly anticipates how they will physically encamp around God's dwelling. It's a really profound marker of their communal identity. Let us examine the biblical narrative. Let's move to the narrative flow now and see how this logically builds. The biblical text actually moves in a beautifully clear, step-by-step sequence of immediate obedience. It's so critical to notice this pattern. Step 1, God's voice initiates the action. He commands Moses to take a comprehensive census of men 20 and older who are able for military service. Step 2, Moses doesn't even try to tackle this monumental task alone. Tribal leaders, these are known and respected heads of ancestral houses. They are appointed to assist him. And step 3, the entire community gathers and the ancestry is officially registered. From the divine command to immediate structured obedience, the whole sequence is absolutely flawless. So we now map out this sequential verse-by-verse breakdown found in Numbers 120 through 43 in the NIV. And listen, this isn't some metaphor or allegory, my friends. This is literal historical accuracy right here. We see exact staggering figures for Reuben, Simeon, Judah, all the way down the line to Naphtali. Just look at the precision of those numbers. This meticulous record-keeping underscores a beautiful truth. The Lord intimately knows his people. He isn't just forming a chaotic mob out there in the desert. He is deliberately mobilizing a highly organized, deeply purposeful congregation that is ready to march. And when you add all those tribes together, you reach this magnificent grand total, 603,550. Take a second and really think about that number. That's enough to populate a major modern city. And this is just the number of fighting men able to serve in Israel's army alone. Think back for a moment to the promise made to Abraham way back in Genesis, that his descendants would be as countless as the stars in the sky. From a single family line, Israel now stands as this vast, formidable host under divine command at Sinai. It's just an awesome testament to the undeniable fact that God is always, always faithful to his promises. But then, right after this massive count, a very distinct boundary line is drawn. The tribe of Levi is entirely excluded from this military muster. Instead, God appoints the Levites to a completely different vocation. They are explicitly charged to guard, to carry, and to encamp directly around the tabernacle. By placing them right there, God is visually proclaiming to the whole nation that worship is not some secondary side activity. It is the very center of their national existence. Levi's vocation literally protects the rest of the nation from divine judgment. Let us examine the theological significance. As we wade into the deeper waters of the text here, we can explicitly define the systematic theology at play. First, let's look at Christology. The fact that the Levites mediate access to the tabernacle wonderfully anticipates the much greater mediation of Jesus Christ. He is our great high priest, literally the only one who secures our permanent access to God. Second, hamartiology, which is the doctrine of sin. The strict physical boundaries in the camp highlight the very real danger of casual nearness to a holy God. It shows the devastating wrath incurred by an unauthorized approach. Third, soteriology, the study of salvation. The fact that they were counted name by specific name demonstrates that God's saving plan isn't generalized. It embraces particular individual lives. And finally, ecclesiology. The whole structure models named, visible, and highly accountable leadership. Now, as serious students of the Word, it is absolutely vital for us to maintain the strict theological boundary between God's program for Israel and his distinct program for the church. On one side, we clearly see national Israel, an earthly nation with a physical tabernacle, geographic borders, and a literal military war census. On the other side, we have the church, a spiritual priesthood operating under a distinct current program of grace. The church enjoys incredible heavenly spiritual blessings, but make no mistake about it, the church does not replace national Israel. God has distinct sovereign plans and future promises for both groups. Let's elaborate a little bit more on that hamartiology concept. Numbers 153 in the NIV states that the Levites must camp around the tabernacle so that my wrath will not fall on the Israelite community. Now, we often think of boundaries as restrictive or harsh, don't we? But here, guarding the holy things is actually an act of profound divine love. It protects the community from the fatal dangers of treating God's holiness casually. I really want you to remember this. Boundaries are not barriers to joy. They are pathways to safe communion. The crucial takeaway here is how this historical reality points forward. Historically, yes, we have Israel's camp around the literal tabernacle at Sinai. That is a concrete fact of history. But prophetically, this carefully bannered arrangement hints at a magnificent future horizon. It points squarely toward the ultimate dwelling of God with humanity, just as it's vividly detailed in the sweeping prophetic visions of Ezekiel 48 and Revelation 21. It looks forward to a time when God's people will be eternally gathered, perfectly ordered, and totally secure around his glorious presence forever. Let us examine the spiritual lessons and application. So what should you take away from this text today for your own walk? Well, first, ordered obedience honors God's presence. Planning and organizing in our own lives and ministries isn't unspiritual at all. It's exactly how redeemed people respond to a speaking God. Second, belonging is deeply pastoral. When we count people in our congregations, we must see the precious faces behind those rosters. Third, reverence protects joy. We absolutely must vigorously resist casualness and fiercely guard the gospel center in both our doctrine and our practice. And finally, humility must govern strength. Taking stock of our resources should always be an exercise in care and humble dependence on God, never an exercise in self-reliance or prideful boasting. Let us examine the conclusion. Ultimately, Numbers chapter 1 is a magnificent, sweeping portrait of a redeemed people arranged squarely around their God. It shows us a mission-ready people centered entirely on a gracious, guiding presence. It reminds us that whether we're in the dusty wilderness of Sinai or navigating the sheer complexities of our modern world, God lovingly and sovereignly orders the steps of his people for their ultimate good and for his eternal glory. As we bring this study to a close, let's reflect on the immense weight of these words from Numbers 152 and 53 in the NIV. The Israelites are to set up their tents by divisions, each of them in their own camp under their standard. The Levites, however, are to set up their tents around the tabernacle of the covenant law, so that my wrath will not fall on the Israelite community. The Levites are to be responsible for the care of the tabernacle of the covenant law. My friends, may the Lord richly bless you and keep you. May he grant you the unshakable grace to boldly order your life around the holy presence of Jesus Christ, finding your ultimate joy and your perfect protection in him alone. Before we part ways today, I want to leave you with this one thought. As you go through your week, really ask yourself, is your life casually drifting, or is it intentionally encamped around the holiness of God? Think about it. For more in-depth studies, visit the Grace and Knowledge series blog at woodybrohm.online